welcome to Here's the Thing. We're back. It's been a while, but sometimes better late than ever. So we want to welcome our community to this program, and hopefully you'll find our conversation interesting and educational, because sometimes we have people and programs that go on in our community that we're not familiar with, and educating ourselves about what goes on in the social field especially is very necessary. We as you know, many people work behind the scenes, a lot of them of course at personal risk, and but that's the work they do, and without them we really couldn't function. Long-term care facilities and other social programs couldn't function in hospitals without these people. And one of those people is our guest today. Is a man who has been involved for many years in the social field. Mr. José Dias is a social worker in Toronto, in the Toronto area. He has a master's degree in social work, working in long-term and home care for many decades. He also has a master's in disability with a focus on undocumented people with disabilities. Has done a lot of work on HIV and LGBTQ, currently coordinating delivery of food to needy people. So I just said a little bit about you. Why don't you tell us a little bit more as to the type of work that you do, that you've done, and how you got here a little bit.
Thank you for inviting me today. So it's a pleasure to be here. As you said, I am a social worker by background. So I have been working in the community on and off for many decades, since I came to Canada in 1981. And so my passion has been always to help people. So initially I had gone into nursing, but then found that social work was my passion. I focused mainly with seniors, so I did a lot of work with seniors with dementia over the years. I also did elder abuse, and then focused a bit more on mental health. I loved working mental health for about 10 years, more or less. And then I shifted into palliative care, which is, more or less my area of specialty now, and it's an area that has a great interest to me. So in the Portuguese community, I have been very vocal throughout the decades, and one person comes to mind, the Dr. Maria Silva. Mm-hmm. So going back to the 90s, we started, a movement to help an individual, a Portuguese individual who had a mental illness. He had schizophrenia, and he was about to be deported. So through some of the work that I did, we were able to bring the community together, and Dr. Silva was just in the beginning stages of his professional life.
Political career.
But we were on the streets in Toronto. So then we were able to mobilize the community, but not only that, the Portuguese government to address the issue of deportation, in particular with people with mental illness and HIV and AIDS, because those individuals, going back a few decades, were deported from Toronto or from Canada and from the US, and they would be left on the street in Lisbon or in the Azores, and some of them would become homeless.
Yes.
So through our activity, so the government then decided to collaborate, and so now they have many programs. When an individual who is positive is deported, there will be a crew on the other end receiving them and housing them. So I think this is the work that I had been doing. So I also did a support group for Portuguese men who were HIV positive, because going back many decades ago was quite a stigma to address the HIV and the AIDS, and so they didn't have any support, so I supported them. So it's one of the things that I really loved it. And then I collaborated with the ACT and Viver coalition when they existed, and they provided services to the Portuguese. But my passion had been with disability. And then I'll talk maybe a bit about the disability factor a bit later.
Yes.
But I have always been into community activism, in the Portuguese community and then also in the Canadian context. I then focused on undocumented children with disabilities, went on to do a master's degree, and was a board member of DCI, which is Defense for Children International. I was a board member, and we represented children at the Canadian national level and international level, and my focus was on refugees and undocumented children. So that was my passion. And we had some Portuguese children and families that I was able to work with.
And help.
And so doing home care, that's what I do. I love doing home care. I think it is a privilege for me to enter someone's home. It's their space. So I learn quite a bit from them. And I'm a better man because of that experience. And so you actually see people as they are. So there's no facade.
They open their hearts and minds, yes.
Exactly. So it's their environment, it's their habitat. And then you're trying to make a difference, whether it's helping them with financial supports, housing supports, or at the end of life. And so that's in a nutshell.
Do you work for a government organization or a private organization?
So it is a private organization. So initially the home care sector, when I started, it was government owned. But then going back a few decades when Mike Harris was the Premier of Ontario.
And they got a few programs.
Yes.
Or privatized them.
He privatized them. So he changed the home care program, as we know, and then the private industry then took over. And so initially I had gone to a hospital, Bridgepoint, but they decided not to engage in direct community care. So now I'm with a private company. And it has been a great learning experience for me to be in the public sector and the private sector. The clientele is the same, the intervention is the same, it's just the background dynamics.
It's just how it gets paid. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
how it gets funded.
Yeah.
Listening to everything that you've done, I kept thinking, that this kind of work could never be for me. And it's not because I wouldn't have it in my heart to help. It's because I think it takes a special individuals with special minds in how they confront society and how they want to help society. I don't think that I would have what it takes to do what you do, and I find it quite admirable that people like yourselves for decades can go from one thing to another, helping different types of individuals and having all of these experiences, and probably in a non-judgmental way.